Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS strategy video for the 2021 Rocket Mortgage Classic. Hopefully you guys had time to take a look at the DFS preview video I put out last night, as I covered a lot of information I'm not going to be pulling into this one. If you have not yet seen that, I highly encourage you guys to stop the video here, go check it out. In fact, I'll link it top right hand corner and make it easy for you guys. So yeah, watch that video if you haven't seen it yet. Come back here and you'll have a better idea of what we're trying to achieve in this one. The strategy videos are meant to narrow down our player pool, really get on a handful of golfers that rate out well in the SweetSpot rank as well as in the bucket system. So I will be looking at SweetSpot score, looking at the ranks, looking at time pairings that go hand in hand with that score, and trying to figure out who our anchor times are, and then look at anchor buckets and try to do kind of a cross-reference to really find the golfers we want to target in this tournament, for this tournament. So timestamps can be found in the description below. Also, those timestamps can be found on YouTube's progress bar. All you got to do is hover over it and you'll find them there. So the very first thing we're going to be looking at are, well, I should say the SweetSpot rank. So I have it already sorted from the best golfer in the field that I have ranked to the 20th golfer. We'll look at those guys. I'm not going to talk about everybody, but if you've been here before, you know I usually like to look at the 7K range that shows up inside the top 20. So this is the top 20 of the SweetSpot score in the field this week. So it goes all the way down to Keegan Bradley, but it is headed by Bryson DeChambeau. And I'm going to show you the total of that score. Let me hide this column. I'm going to show you the total of that score. It's 822. The next one is Hideki at 790. So he has a 30-point swing on anyone else. You can see between Hideki and Patrick Reed, it's only 6 points, and between Reed and Neiman, it's 8 points. So there's a huge disparity at the top. Bryson is my favorite. He's obviously the odds-on favorite, and it's, not even, with that, it's not even close. But yeah, Bryson's my number one guy, followed by Hideki. You can see the rest of the guys up here. Like I said, I'm just really going to be talking about some of the lower price guys that I would call value plays. We're going to start with Maverick McNeely, $7,700. He's my 10th ranked golfer in the field this week. So I'm going to be playing a lot of Maverick McNeely. Cameron Tringali at $8,100 is another good value, as he's ahead of Matthew Wolff and Kevin Kisner, which those guys are just a slightly higher price than him. But yeah, Cameron Tringali, number 11 in my ranking. I don't know where he is quite with the salary rank, but again, you can see there are some 9K golfers and 8K golfers that he is better than. And I guess that includes Keegan Bradley as well. From there, it would be Doc Redman, $7,900. I like that. It's interesting to see Phil Mickelson up there. I'm not sure if I can really get around to Phil. We'll be talking about him because he's in one of the marquee tee times, but I don't know if I can trust him. Either way, he is inside the top 20 of the SweetSpot rank, so that has to go for something, right? Maybe I will play him. We'll see. We'll double check. But I think that's. We have Danny Willett and Chris Kirk, $7,400. Danny Willett had appendicitis not too long ago. I think that's what took him out of the tournament before the U.S. Open, I believe. I can't remember if he was either at the Palmetto or if he was at the Memorial, but he had to withdraw because his appendix burst. So Danny Willett is back. I assume he's going to be completely healthy, and if so, he had some good form coming in. So seeing him at number 18 in the model is really good. All right, so with this, let me show you what that SweetSpot score comprised of, first of all. So I'm looking at official world golf ranking. It's a great one to look at. I didn't update what the grass is, but I'm looking at POA splits. So we're looking at overall average, which dates back to 2013. We're looking at top 10 success rates, which again, that goes back to 2013. And then course history. We've only played this tournament 2 times. So I don't really know if the course history is all that good. And if the numbers look weird to you, it's because I'm trying to get the best golfer with recent form as close to 100 as possible. Just the default value of 100. It doesn't mean anything other than that is kind of the threshold. So that's what I'm trying to do with these scores. And then I'm using bogey avoidance, birdie or better. I'm doing the same thing with these stats. These are your recent form stats with DK average, and then finishing position with the recent form average and scoring average. It goes back the last 7 weeks. I'm dividing this number into 2. So first of all, it looks at it, tries to get the numbers close to 100, and then we divide by 2. So we shouldn't see anything above 50. Primarily, I don't want random one-off scores, like either it's DraftKings points or maybe it's scoring average. I don't want one-off, like really good performances of a guy who was in this field that only played in last week's tournament that had really good stats to really pop in the model. I do want them to pop, but not, drastically. Let's put it that way. And I'm looking at season-long DraftKings average and season-long scoring average. So now that you know what the score is comprised of, I use this in a way to talk about tee time pairings to go along with the golfers' tee times. So I have the game number over here in this column that I've just highlighted. And the first thing I'm going to do, so in order for me to talk about them, all 3 golfers need to have a colored number. So the very first one you can see would be the 8s that you see here. Now, there are different colors in here, and I'll explain what those are. The dark green, okay, so I'm looking at 2 stats primarily that make up these colors. One is DraftKings average, and I'm looking at field average. Golfers who are better than field average in DraftKings points season long will get this light green color. And then I'm also looking at scoring average. So again, the field average for scoring average season long, anybody who's better than that field average will get this yellow color. And if they have both of those stats better than field average, they'll get this dark green. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is make sure all 3 golfers are colored, like they have a colored game. With that, going from there, I then go to SweetSpot score, and if their collective scores together are less than 100, they're going to get a dark green color. Those are a part of the marquee group. This light green means their score is under 200, and if it's yellow, it means their score is under 300. And really, yellow is not something I'm really going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about the light greens either. But if I were to scroll through these, you can see the first group is Kevin Kisner, Sebastian Munoz, and Satoshi Kodaira. I like Munoz a lot. It also makes me like Kisner a little bit too. So I will be playing some of those guys. We'll talk about these dark green colors a little bit later, but I'm going to go ahead and just quickly talk about these other ones. Another group that doesn't quite have the score under 100 would be Siwoo Kim, Nate Lashley, and Scott Piercy. Nate Lashley and Scott Piercy, great 6K values. Siwoo Kim, I don't mind him at $8,000, but it is kind of weird. Like, he is very hit or miss. And for him to be $8,000 is difficult for me. Maybe it's not difficult for you guys, but it's kind of difficult for me. I don't want to play Siwoo at $8,000, but I kind of do. We'll get through what my max ownerships are for a lot of these golfers, and I'll tell you what mine is for Siwoo Kim. But I don't know if I can get there at $8,000. The next group has one golfer that I really like. We already talked about him with the SweetSpot score. That's Maverick McNeely. He is 10th ranked in the SweetSpot score. He has both stats better than field average, so everything's pointing up. And he's paired with Harry Higgs and Matthew Neesmith. I don't mind that pairing whatsoever. I think there's some comfortability with this group. I want to see what their ages are. 25, 29, 27. So Harry Higgs is actually the older guy in the group, but I think I don't know this for a fact. I don't even know if they're friends, but I feel like this group can get along. So actually, I don't mind it, and it kind of boosts me to play more Maverick McNeely. Then we have some groups here that are highlighted yellow. All I'm going to do is highlight for you guys. I'm not going to talk about any of them, just so you guys can see them easier on the screen. I know it can be difficult sometimes with all the different colors. The next group that's notable to talk about would be Will Zalatoris, Sepp Straka, and Peter Malnati. I'll tell you right now, Peter Malnati I don't care for that much this week, but Will Zalatoris and Sepp Straka, I have a lot of interest in playing both of them. I think Sepp Straka at $7,700, I think it's either him or McNeely. I wouldn't be shocked if either of those guys finish inside the top 10. So I wonder if I should go kind of like back and forth. There are do 50% of my lineups with Sepp and 50% of my lineups with McNeely. I like those guys a lot this week. Sepp is coming off of a pretty decent finish. I think he was top 10 last week. Yeah, he was 8th place 10th place last week. So yeah, he's coming in with good form. Pierre Malnati, I don't want to play him that much, but he might be in a good spot because the other two golfers might boost his performance up a little bit. Then we have Danny Willett, Troy Merritt, and Kevin Chappell. It's another notable group. They're actually all better than field average in both DraftKings points and scoring average. And this is one of the first groups off in the afternoon. So, I'm sorry. I guess that started with Varner, Hadley, and Gordon. But yeah, if you wanted to stack that PM AM wave, I think, you could grab some lower price guys here. Willett, $7,400. That's a pretty decent value. They're all kind of middling with their value. Kevin Chappell might have the best value, but all three of them together, not together, but any one of them, I think will round out your lineup pretty decently. Scrolling down, we got another notable group here. Wow. I almost was going to call him Joaquin Niemann, Garrick Higo, and Russell Knox. I like that group quite a bit. I like Niemann, and I think a lot of people do. Garrick Higo is no slouch. I got to see him play finally at the Travelers, so that was he's a very good golfer. And I mean, I shouldn't say good golfer. He's a very talented golfer. I did enjoy watching him play, and I know he draws the golf ball. A lefty that draws the golf ball. Trying to see. Okay, so his POA stats don't look good. He missed the cut last week. That's fine. I am not worried about a missed cut. It is one of those buckets that, show up inside the top 10. Well, we've only had 2 years here, so I can't tell you that it happens quite a bit. Like, it's one of those that always happens because we only have 2 years of data. It's kind of silly to say that. Either way, I'm not scared to play him. The next one has Chris Kirk, who is actually a good value or a good golfer in my ranking, paired up with Peter Uihlein and Camilo Villegas. I don't want to talk about these yellow groups, but I do like Kirk quite a bit. Villegas, believe it or not, he's been on tour, 13, 14 years? I can't remember exactly how long. 0% inside the top 10, dating back to 2013. So I don't recall when he, exited the tour. I know he was gone for a while because of a major medical. I don't know exactly how long that was, but still, going back to 2013, he has 0% finishes inside the top 10 on POA Anna greens. So that is something to take into consideration. And that's it for my notables. Now we'll get into the marquee groups. This is what I would call the anchor groups. I'm going to sort by color, look at this light green, and let me go ahead and just highlight them by every third golfer. That way it kind of makes this little line, makes it easier to talk about. So our first group is Matthew Wolff, Max Homa, and Bubba Watson. I imagine this is a group that's going to be really easy to build lineups from. We have two guys that are in the low 9Ks and then Max Homa in the 84. Altogether, I like them playing together. Matthew Wolff is a talker, Bubba Watson's a talker, and I know Max Homa doesn't mind talking himself. So I think that'll be a very interesting dynamic, and I think it's going to actually help someone like a Matthew Wolff. I was originally down on him during the preview video, but I might be picked up a little bit here now that he's paired with Bubba. I think that's actually going to work together, and that's kind of weird, right? Now that I think about it, Matthew Wolff and Bubba, both of them battling mental illness, or I should say illness, but depression, which I guess we can call mental illness. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but I see it kind of as a benefit for both of them. I could also see it as a detriment. If they both kind of are feeling down, that energy in a group is a real thing. If there's negative energy, that's just going to really pull everyone down. But let's remain positive. I think it's a decent one. It's a decent group. I like Max Homa in this spot. I'm actually warming up to Bubba Watson and Matthew Wolff. So I don't mind this. And as I look at these four groups, I already know I'm going to be pulling some of these 10K golfers and it's just easier to go with the next group. So my strategy with this is I will probably grab like a Hideki Matsuyama, Patrick Reed, or a Webb Simpson, but I'm not going to grab someone else in their group. It does happen sometimes that two golfers in the same group will finish inside the top 10, but I'm here to tell you I've analyzed it enough that the likelihood is very low. For whatever reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but it is fairly low. So for me, I would probably start here and I would grab golfers from one of these two groups. So, that first group, I could see pairing up a Matsuyama with a Max Homa or a Bubba or a Matt Wolf. I don't mind that. And then to go along with that, having like a Ricky Fowler or a Phil Mickelson, that wouldn't be terrible. This last tournament at the Travelers, what I found out was, there was one golfer, I can't remember off the top of my head, but some of these golfers that you don't anticipate doing well. So let's say Phil Mickelson. Phil, for me, is going to be that golfer that I don't anticipate doing well at this tournament because he's $8,000 and probably overlooked because obviously Kazire at 74 or Mackenzie Hughes at 72 might be a better value. Phil might get overlooked, and for whatever reason, he ends up being the guy that finishes inside the top 10. So I'm not going to ignore anybody within these groups. I'll play just about everybody that's within these marquee groups. I don't know exactly how much that I'm going to do, but if I am pairing, I'm going to start with like a Patrick Reed and go to a Max Homa or a Matthew Wolff or a Bubba Watson or even a Sung Jae or a Kazire or a Hughes. I'll go that way. I also don't mind going like Patrick Reed and Ricky Fowler or Phil Mickelson. So like I said, I'm not going to grab anybody else in his group if I'm going to go that route. But yeah, I like this first group. The second group, I also like. I think Fowler and Mickelson together, that's a good pairing. I think they're going to help each other out with energy, at least. Sung Jae Im, Pat Kazire, and Mackenzie Hughes, I have no feel for this group whatsoever. It's there. That's one thing. And 74 and 7200, pretty easy to build around. So I could see it happening. But if I'm being honest, I don't really care for this group. This kind of reminds me of the Justin Rose group, I think, from last week, where no one finished inside the top 10. And I think somebody was 90-something, 100 there. I think Rose was 84. But either way, this kind of reminds me of that group. And I don't know. We'll see. I'm still going to play golfers from it, but probably going to stay away from that. And then Patrick Reed, Webb Simpson, Jason Kokrak, that's a pretty decent group too. We'll see what ends up happening with Webb, but they all hit draws off the tee, and that's really fun to play. When each golfer in your group plays the same ball or the same shot shape off the tee, very easy to visualize where to land the ball. Also, if someone hits it offline, very easy to not do that. Sometimes you kind of overdo it though, which can be its own mess, but preferably I'd rather play with golfers that hit the same shot shape off the tee. So I do like that group quite a bit. Okay, I think we can move on. Here's the thing. I would normally go to anchor buckets and tell you which buckets that I want to anchor around. And I do have it filtered currently by the buckets that I do want to filter around. So I always come here and look at the top 5 frequencies. So the column that I have highlighted is my minimum column within that top 5 frequency. What this is saying is the amount of, or the value you see in one of these columns is the minimum amount of times that bucket has shown up inside the top 10. So the first bucket I've highlighted are last year 2s. That's that 40 to 60 range. So a golfer who had finished last year's tournament inside 40 to 60th place. We have seen at least 2 golfers finish inside the top 5. And to be honest, these last year stats are only looking at 1 year's worth of data. So it's kind of pointless. We probably shouldn't even look at last year's stats. So let me go ahead and just remove it. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm looking at. And I really kind of ignore salary and strokes gain. It's just those are not very sticky stats to go with. So I'll probably really only be talking about last week and recent form. So we have 6 buckets we can look at, but again, we only have 2 years worth of data. That doesn't really give me a lot of confidence. I will say this though, 2 years where we've seen a minimum happen, kind of a good idea that we're going to see those golfers or golfers from that bucket. I'll put it this way. We're going to see that bucket inside the top 10. I have a very strong feeling that all 6 of these, and I guess if not all 6, we'll definitely see 5 inside the top 10. So I think it's worth talking about. Let me go ahead and reopen this so we can look at everybody. And I think the very first bucket that I want to talk about would be last week 3s. So let's go ahead and take a look at last week 3s. Let me sort by salary first. I will say this, everyone in the field, so I'm actually including last year buckets. If I include last year buckets, the ones that you saw there for anchor buckets, everyone in the field is a part of one of the anchor buckets. And that usually means everyone's live for finishing inside the top 10. Because it doesn't matter how many times you're in an anchor bucket, like there are 6 stat categories that have buckets inside them. So each one of those stat categories, I usually use the term as bucket, which might be confusing for you guys because there's 6 buckets within each stat category. And if I say the strokes gained bucket, it might be confusing. But either way, there are 6 different stat categories. And just because somebody's in all 6, like if there are anchor buckets within each of those 6 stat categories, if a golfer has all 6 of those, that doesn't guarantee they finish inside the top 10. It just gives them a better chance. Having one bucket that's an anchor bucket does the exact same thing. It gives you a better chance to finish inside the top 10 than not. With that being said, I know that might have been a little confusing. If every golfer has at least one of their buckets as an anchor bucket, that means everyone's live. And it does not help whatsoever in the strategy video to say that. But I do want to give you a heads up with that. But that's including last year, and I forgot to remove it when I was going through everything and kind of prepping for this video. But either way, last week 3s. Not a very big group. There are 13, and it's headed by Bryson. Bubba Watson's in it, as is Jason Day and Kevin Kisner and Sepp Straka. We were talking about Sepp Straka. So those 5 golfers I like quite a bit. And I don't mind choosing any one of them. So, either way, I should say either way, but by the way, any of these golfers are live. Like, I like any of them, but I do like Bryson a little bit more. I already know it's last week 2, last week 3, last week 1. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at last year 2s. And now we have Matthew Wolff. So obviously we know Matthew Wolff and Bubba Watson are paired together. So we're already talking about one of those marquee groups. But we also have Max Homa in here as well. So that group all together, we already see all 3 of them in an anchor bucket, in one of the 2 anchor buckets that we just talked about. But this one is a little bit bigger. 63 golfers in this bucket, and our minimum is 2. So we're looking probably to grab 2 golfers from this bucket, maybe even more. I think the projection that I have for this is a little high. Actually 2.68. So it's not high at all. I'm projecting around 2 golfers, maybe 3, to finish inside the top 10. So you got Matthew Wolff, Keegan Bradley, Ricky Fowler, Max Homa, Garrick Higo, Emiliano Grillo. Like, there's a lot of pretty good golfers from 7K and up. I mean, Sebastian Munoz is one of my favorite plays this week. I mean, I'm projecting around 2, but the max was 4, I believe. Max inside the top 10 was 4. Inside the top 5 is 3. So you can go anywhere between 2 and 4. I think it's going to be just fine. Even if you did select 4 and only 2 show up inside the top 10, you have a good shot that, the other 2 will finish top 20 or at least make the cut. So I do like that. Last week 1s is the next one we'll talk about, and that's a minimum of 2, projecting around 2. So let's take a look. If I said last week 2, I meant last week 1. And we have 3 of our 10K golfers: Webb Simpson, Hideki Matsuyama, Will Zalatoris. Yeah, you can't go wrong there. I think this is going to, finish inside the top 10. Very good shot, very good chance. Jason Kokrak's there, Sung J M, Gary Woodland. I do like Lucas Glover to some extent. I like Alex Noren. I like Cam Davis. I think everybody in the industry likes Cam Davis this week. And then some decent 6K golfers, but I never really put a lot of investment in 6K. So I also suggest or encourage you guys not to do that as well. Let's go ahead and change gears, move to recent form buckets, which is looking at the last 7 weeks. And again, we only have 2 years worth of data on this. And I already know we're looking at buckets 3, 2, 1. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Bryson DeChambeau showing up once again, as is Patrick Reed and Hideki Matsuyama. So altogether, that's pretty good. Doc Redman we see here, but I believe that's the first time we've seen him. Could be the second time, but I doubt it. I think it's the first time. Yeah, we wouldn't have talked about him. He's in the last week's 6 bucket. Kyle Stanley, Ryan Armour, Troy Merritt, Bo Hosler, and Satoshi Kodaira. So a decent group, but we have 3 10K golfers. I would assume, what was our minimum? 2? Our minimum's 1. We have a max of 4. I'm projecting only 1 golfer from this bucket finishes top 10. When I look at the golfers here, if I'm only choosing one, it's the golfers inside the 10K range. You could be contrarian and think maybe Doc Redman's your guy or Kyle Stanley, and then fade the 3 guys that you see at the top. To add a little piece to this, again, we've seen a max of 4, so we could have more. It's just that the bucket this year has less golfers in it than it does on average, and the success rate isn't like super high. So the fact that we have less makes that projection a little bit lower. But I could see somewhere maybe 1 to 2. I think we could see 2 golfers in this bucket finish inside the top 10. I'm just, fairly confident that 1 will finish inside the top 10. Moving on to our recent form bucket 2s. We do have quite a bit of golfers in this one. By quite a bit, I mean 66 golfers. So that's a lot. But the thing is, it starts at Keegan Bradley, and then only grabs 2 guys that are in the 8K range, and then it's 7,500 and less. So kind of a weaker bucket just based off of salary points. If we were to take a look, recent form 2s, this is your 60 to 80 range, by the way. We've seen a minimum of 2 golfers inside the top 5 for the 2 years that we have data for. So that's a pretty high number. And we only see on average 25 golfers in this bucket. We have 66 this week. So that in itself kind of lends me to think we're going to find some golfers out of this bucket finishing inside the top 10. For me, it's not like super easy that it's going to be Keegan or any of these top salary guys. It very well could be some of these 6K golfers. It could be Tom Hoagie. It could be Peter Uihlein. If we've seen a minimum of 2 inside the top 5, maybe we see an extra one. Maybe we see 3 golfers. If there was a reason to select someone in the 6K range, I think it's because of this bucket. And I think you'd be okay selecting any of them. And then our last bucket, recent form 1s. Now we have the other 2 golfers in the 10K range. Let's take a look at what our minimum is. For top 5, it's 1. Maximum's 3. We have 55 golfers in that bucket this year, 23 on average, so we're way over that. And I'm projecting around 5 golfers inside the top 10. It's worth noting that I projected 5 for that last bucket we talked about. So, and that's within inside the top 10. But for me, I'm always looking at the minimums, so I'm only going to play at least one out of this group, but I will play up to 5. Like, I have no problem playing up to 5. That will be kind of my max. And when we have all the talent that we see up here from Matthew Wolff, we have 7 golfers right here that are 9K and above. And we have most of our 8K. So 8K and above, we have 15 of our, I don't know how many there are, 17 golfers. We have the majority of them in this bucket. So the chances of any of these guys finishing inside the top 10 or even top 5 is pretty high. Just based off of name value. Obviously, DraftKings is pricing these guys accordingly to what they feel is a fair price, and I wouldn't disagree with them. I have a lot of the guys inside my top 10 ranking that are here. Hard to determine which one, to anchor your lineups around. I do like Webb Simpson a lot. I do like Zalatoris. I like Neiman. Yeah, and obviously we know here are your golfers that are in those marquee groups. So we have a bunch of them. That's a lot. That's like the majority of our marquee groups are in this bucket. So if you did want to anchor around some of these guys, I think it's super, super smart to do so. And really, that's gonna round out my anchor buckets. Again, I am excluding a bunch of buckets that probably would be included in the bucket. Like the anchor buckets, like last year 2, last year 3, last year 1. Again, I only have 1 year of data for these buckets. I don't know how relevant they are, and I don't really care to talk about them. One piece I do want to add, if I open this up to everybody, I ended up, I don't think I'm going to be able to sort. Yeah, I can't sort. All these little black tick marks by the SweetSpot score, each anchor bucket that I went over, if they were in all 3 of, or, obviously I went through recent form, last week's stats, but I did last year's stats off of, or away from the video. If they were in all 3 of those stats, I put a little black tick mark. And I want to see what this is going to look like in the review video to see how many of these guys finish top 10. It's not, for me, I don't care to tell, I'm not trying to convince you to play any of these guys, but it's interesting. So I'm not going to go through each bucket like I did last week and go through all of my ownership plays. That was one thing I did. I like to be completely transparent with you guys, and I want to show you how I do my process, how I figure everything out, putting together formulas, that kind of stuff in my spreadsheets. I want to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about. I'm kind of toying with the idea of removing that. Maybe I would do that in another video. Like if I were to create, like, say a club or a membership or something like that, I would give that information, but I don't think it's really necessary. I don't know if you guys really need to know how I came up with some of this information. If it seems like sketchy or fishy, then I definitely will. But in this next segment, I'm going to show you what my exposure levels are going to be. I created a column. I did this last week, but I calculated it with you. I'll just go over it really quickly. I use the optimizer to figure this out. I have an ownership page down here. Let me scroll in a little bit, or zoom in a little bit. So you can obviously see a bunch of just probably eye-crossing data that shows up. So based off of the buckets that I have over in this column, and obviously the name and salary, I then calculate the maximum ownerships, and it's all based off the buckets. So what I ended up doing was go here to the summary. If I open this up to all of the buckets, I grabbed the numbers right in here, the success rate, and I use this as my max ownership, or I use it as an ownership. So I would bring up that spreadsheet again. Let's see, hold on. I'm trying to remember. So, okay, let's bring up the spreadsheet really quick. So SG stands for the strokes gained bucket. Because Bryson is a 1, if I go ahead, minimize this, look at our strokes gained 1s, you can see 20% is in this column right here that I've cross-referenced. So 20%. As you can see in the spreadsheet, it's 20. And I do have a formula in here that goes through all 6 of the buckets within that strokes gained category and what those ownerships would be. So I do that for strokes gained, course history, recent form, last year, last week. And then I also have kind of a a placeholder ownership for just based off their salary. And I can obviously use the salary from the salary buckets, but I kind of just done this on my own. It's all based off of price points. And it's just how I create lineups. There are thresholds that I want to keep the ownerships under. So for my optimizer, you got to look at it from like, oh shoot, I forget how to explain this, but from the number 100. So when you create your first lineup, that'll drop it, obviously now it turns into, shoot, how do I say this? Let's say Bubba, or let's Patrick Reed is at 20%. If the optimizer likes Patrick Reed right away in the first lineup, it's going to select him. And then it has to wait 4 more lineups before selecting him in the next one, if that makes sense. So every 5th lineup, if Patrick Reed is the best value, he will be selected. And there are different thresholds. So obviously at 20%, it's every 5. At 16%, it's every 6 lineups. And then at 14%, it's every 7. At 12%, it's every 8. And obviously at every 10%, it's 10. So it goes through those thresholds. And basically, if I want the optimizer to select a golfer 1 every 10 lineups, then I'll put them at 10% ownership. And that's kind of what I am doing within this. I know that was kind of a long-winded explanation of what this number is, but then I totaled them up, which it's basically an average. It is counting everything here and then dividing by how many buckets that it's selecting. And then this is just a conversion, but then I have my min and my max. So it's just looking at min and max. And I'll tell you one thing, this is just for me to copy and paste. So I can go ahead and go over and copy this. Like if I don't like Bryson, what the bucket systems tell me, I need to play him in at least 11% of my lineups. The max tells me 25. The median says 19. And the average, let's see, what is this? This is the max of RN and N2, R2, N2. Okay, so it's looking at what is higher, the average going across or the median. Sometimes the median is higher and it will choose the median, but yeah, this is just looking at what is the max between these two numbers. It's just different numbers I can use to add for my ownership. Okay, that was long-winded, didn't need to go that far. But this is where I start with my ownerships. I grab it right from, actually I did it from this number right here. I grabbed from this one, I copy and pasted it over into this column here. So you can see Bryson's at 25%. I didn't change that. I do like Bryson quite a bit. But from here, I know this is very confusing. From here, I actually went in and looked at what the projection is. So 2.56, I multiplied that by 100 and got my maximum ownership levels. So for last year 2s, I am allowing myself to use 256 percentage points across all golfers. So if I go ahead and look at all last year 2s and I calculate all of these numbers, I can play up to 250. I have this currently at 193, but guess what? I did this for every bucket, and try to come across like a very close number for each bucket. Now, if you think about that, I'm going through 36 buckets, and for each 36, I'm trying to get close to the number that it shows. So really, it's fine-tuning my ownerships. And I know that's probably a lot of busy work, but I feel like it gets me on a good number. It doesn't let me play too much of one guy, but it also kind of boosts some golfers I probably wouldn't think of boosting. You know, if I have to select, let's see, last year's 6s, are those bad golfers? Yeah. So if this number was, say, like 28%, I have to choose between these crappy golfers and boost their ownerships. Now, in each one of their other buckets that they represent, they're going to account for that number. So then I have to adjust those. So either way, it's a trial and error thing. There is no rhyme or reason other than me just trying it out. And that's how I did my ownerships. So hopefully that made sense. If not, I apologize. I don't know how else to explain it. I felt like that was a pretty good explanation, but you can obviously tell me if it wasn't. So now I've sorted by who my top ownership guys are, and I'll just talk about the top 20. And it might not be much, of a surprise, but I do have Bryson as my number one guy. And then I have 3 10K golfers at 20%, and Will Zalatoris is at 16. So all the 10K golfers, I'm going to play them in 100% of my lineups. I should say 100% of my lineups. Their ownership equals 100%. Now I can pair these guys up together in some lineups and create some really crazy stars and scrubs lineups, which I probably will do. I don't want them in all 100% of my lineups. So now I should say all of them. I don't want one of them in all 100% of my lineups. That didn't make sense either. I'm just trying to say at least one of them. So anybody from this group, the 10K group, I do want some of my lineups to start with a 9K golfer. Let's put it that way, and not have a 10K golfer in it. So I can do this one of two ways. So I can come up with a number, let's say 80. 80 lineups, I want 100 percentage points used between, I want all of the percentage points right here. That means I'm going to have to pair up some of these guys. Now, if you just do the rough math, if I have 100 percentage points, it's 101, by the way, but let's just say it's 100. 100 percentage points, and in 80 of my lineups, I'm going to have at least one 10K golfer in it. That would mean to take away from 100 and get to 80, I have 20 percentage points to add. So that means 20 of those 80 lineups will have at least 2 10K golfers in it. Does that make sense? Hopefully that made sense. I'm okay with that, but part of me is not okay with that. So basically what I would do, so I have this spreadsheet. Somebody actually reached out and wanted to know how I create this. So I just copy and paste a player. That didn't work. I need to open this up and grab the other one. So I'll grab this one and post it here, and then updates. So I will go over and explain how this is done. But anyways, so I put Bryson down. Now, I already know I want to play Bryson in 25 of my lineups. So I'm just going to click and drag all the way down to 25. So this is 25 Bryson. I already know he's the top price guy. So how about we do this? Let's add 2 Patrick Reeds. Leaves me $6,900 for the remaining golfers. That's not good. I can scroll down to like 18. And this will give me my 20. So that's 17. There's 18. So 18 plus the 2, Patrick Reed. And then for the next one, what I can do is go Webb. Put him with Patrick Reed twice. And put him with Bryson once. Here, let me see how this works out. So 2 there, 4. That's 4 in total. So I'm going to drag this down to 14. And this will get me my... No. I need it to 16. This will give me my 20 Webb Simpsons. And then I want 20 Hidekis. Well, I'm going to do 2 here. I'm already kind of regretting this. I want to put them all in one. That's probably smart enough. And since I have 6 there, I need to put him in 14 lineups by himself. Let's see here. Do we have this correct? So that's 14, 16, 18, 20. Yeah, this works. I have 6 positions available for the next 10K golfer, which is Will Zalatoris. Let's go ahead and put them in 6. This goes down to 81. So there's my 80 lineups that have these guys in. I'll pair them up with Hideki. So I have what? Actually, that's 7. So 7, 9. We'll put them here. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I do have the 1 left over. So it would have worked pretty solid. Should we just put him with Hideki? Nah. I'll just put him in his own. So we'll have 81 lineups. That's fine. That's okay with me. So anyways, I would do something like that and then fill in the rest. As I look at this, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I think it's okay. I think I can live with it. I mean, that would mean great diction. 17 lineups are of Bryson by himself, which I'm okay with that. And 12 are by Patrick Reed by himself. 12 are with Webb Simpson by themselves, so on and so forth. So I can go that way, and that covers all the ownerships there. I don't know how I feel about that. I might adjust these to get down to like 16% for each of these guys. Just because I think that's probably a better way to go about it. I do feel like limiting my exposure on at least one of these guys would be a huge help in creating lineups. But it's not necessary. And I could actually start with each of these guys if I feel very confident that that's going to happen. And I can also split this up too. I can take one golfer, away from each of these lineups and just add them down here. And maybe I only have 10 lineups where it doesn't start with a 10K golfer. I'd be okay with that too. I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. So anyways, that's how I would start it. But to show you guys all of my exposures, which I should have just started with, makes timestamps a little bit easier. Now we're kind of jumping all over the place. For my 10K golfers, here are the ownerships. And then I have a few guys here at 16%, including Maverick McNeely and Brant Snedeker. So those are my 7K golfers that I'm willing to play in 16% of my lineups. And Neiman, 98, Watson, 92, Woodland, Kisner, and Max Homa in my 8K range. I like those golfers quite a bit. Looking down here, one golfer is 14%. That's Doc Redman, and I only have a handful of 12%ers, and that's a bunch of the 9K golfers, some of the 8K golfers, but then there's Sepp Straka, Adam Hadwin, and Mark Hubbard for some decent 7K golfers. And then 10%, I'm surprised like how limited I have some of these. Like surprising in a good way. 10% Grillo, Tringali, just a bunch of 7K golfers underneath that. Noren, Stanley Hickok, Willett, Kirk, Tom Lewis, and Bo Hosler. And just to mention this, I never place 6K golfers more than 10%. So they would never be above this level. We don't even see any of them here, but I'm guessing we're going to see them in the 8%. So yeah, we do have a few of our 6K golfers. So I'm pretty confident in the golfers like Martin Laird, Peter Uihlein, Henrik Norlander, Cameron Champ, Jimmy Walker, Robert Streb, Aaron Badley. Cameron Champ was one of those golfers that was in a bucket. I had originally had him at 1%, and I couldn't justify adding more percentage points to other golfers, so I added it to Cameron Champ. Like, I feel like that's going to help, but it possibly could make things worse. I'm not very confident on someone like a Cameron Champ, but this might be a tournament that gets him kind of turned around, and I think he could finish decent. Here's some 7%ers. Si-Woo finds himself there. Si-Woo Kim. And then Brendan Todd, Ches Reavie. I'm okay with that. I actually lowered ownership on Ryan Armour. I believe he was owned even more. Like the bucket system wanted him to be, or I should say my ownership process wanted him more. I took some percentage points off. Sebastian Munoz, I left him as is. I do like Munoz, but he's only being shown in 7%. I don't think I'm going to adjust it, but I do like Munoz this week. So I'm okay if I create 100 lineups and he's only in 7 of them. I'll put one of the lineups he's in one of my higher entry fees and just go with that. So I like that. Here's some of my 6%ers. I'm not going to talk about these guys. I'll just let you see them on the screen. Go ahead and pause the video. Take a look. And then some 5% golfers. And then from there, it doesn't really matter. I guess what I could do is just show you some of the low price guys. Not low price guys, but the low percentage guys that are kind of a higher price tag. So right away in this first section between 4 and 3, I have Harold Varner III. I just don't have much confidence in him. He has 0%. Oh no, he does not. He has 2.2% top 10 success rate on POA. So not a very high success rate on POA. KH Lee has 0% on POA. And a lot of the reason some of these ownerships are low is because of their POA stats. So Brian Stewart's one of those guys, Dylan Fratelli. I think this is all fine. You know, I don't mind what I have for the ownership of some of these guys, as I don't trust any of them. And you can see that by their top 10 success rates on POA grass. So I think that's probably just going to, I guess I can mention Doug Gim and Mito Pereira, which a lot of people are on. I'll use the wait and see approach. Didn't work for me with Garrett Higo winning at Congaree, but yeah, if Mito comes in and ends up doing well, then that's on me. I'm okay with that. I don't mind. But yeah, those are some notable 1%ers. And there's a bunch of other guys down here at 1%. I don't think anyone's in the 7K range. Everyone is, 6K or lower. Okay. So that would be the ownership. The only thing that I really want to do from here, I can build some lineups. I can go ahead and show you the optimizer and what that looks like. So how about this? Let's go ahead and take a look at our marquee groups. We'll sort this by game number. And let's select some golfers that, we want to anchor our lineups around. So I'm going to start with Patrick Reed, and I'm going to go with a Patrick Reed. How about this? We already know we're going to put two 10K golfers together. So why don't we put Patrick Reed and Hideki Matsuyama together? See what the optimizer will do with those golfers. So I'll put a yes next to Matsuyama and a yes next to Reed and see what the optimizer pulls out with the remaining golfers. Okay. Not a terrible group of golfers. We have Patrick Reed, Hideki Matsuyama, Danny Willett, Chris Kirk, Mackenzie Hughes, and Nick Taylor. So that isn't terrible. And that uses $50,000 of the salary. That isn't bad at all. So that was interesting. Let's pull another one. So let's not go Patrick Reed, Hideki. Let's go Patrick Reed and say Bubba. Most of these 7K golfers are going to show up multiple times. So just want to throw that out there. But I do have some constraints in here already. I have all my max numbers set. So yeah, some things changed. We now see Cameron Tringali and Cameron Tringali and Charles Howell III, but I believe Willett and Hughes stayed from the last one. So that's also interesting. We don't have to dive down in the 6K range starting with a 10 and a 9. That's not terrible. What would be the next one? Here's one thing I want to mention. I wouldn't mind starting with like a Jason Kokrak and say Ricky Fowler. Let's do something like that. Because I do like Bryson, but I'm interested to see if the optimizer will grab a high price guy or not. So let's see here. What did we say? Max Homa? Did we say Max Homa? It was Ricky Fowler and Jason Kokrak. Okay. Jason Kokrak and Ricky Fowler. And let's see if it grabs a 10K golfer. It does not. Keeps it pretty balanced. Kokrak, Fowler, Homa. We did not select Homa, so it's good to see Homa. That would mean 3 golfers from that. 3 golfers from the marquee group. Then we have Doc Redman, Maverick McNeely, and Chris Kirk. Those are all great golfers. I like them a lot. Let's see here. Let's go with a Bryson lineup. And here's the other thing to consider. Although maybe 2 of these guys show up inside the top 10, if, say, Bryson beats out a Hideki Matsuyama, you wouldn't want to start with Hideki Matsuyama. Like going with a Bryson and then somebody else here, that might be a better way to do it. So let's see if we went with Bryson and Bryson and Matthew Wolff. Since those two usually duke it out whenever they are playing well, let's go ahead and put those guys together and see what kind of lineup spits out from this. Do 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 do. Cue the Jeopardy music. Do 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 do. Come on. Maybe the optimizer doesn't like it. If you can see that there's a bunch of solutions that are happening down here that the optimizer is trying to find a decent lineup to put together. It's trying to find the most optimal lineup to put DeChambeau and Matthew Wolff together. So maybe this is a sign. We don't play DeChambeau and Wolff together. I don't look at it that way. I think it's... Yeah, we got one. McNeely, Griffin, Kirk, and Nick Taylor. So we've already seen Nick Taylor, McNeely. So McNeely and Chris Kirk, the optimizer is going to like. No surprise there. And I wouldn't put any minimums because I just don't feel confident in any of these minimums whatsoever. So I'm not going to do that. Now, the other thing to do with some of these is I've kind of started to get back into building these out by hand. So if I were to go like Bryson and Patrick, here's the one thing I will do right away. I'll tell you this right now. My 6K approach is I can filter by condition and just say less than 7,000. And then go by ownership. Here's what I would do. You can see some of these guys are at 1% and then some are at 0. I'm not going to select those 0 golfers, but when I do this, boom, just copy and paste all of them down. Now, that's probably too much for me, but we're going to have to play multiple 6K golfers, so I have no problem with that. There's a really good function on Google Sheets. If you right click and hit randomize range, it'll just randomize everybody. They go in different positions. So that's a really fun one. What I would end up doing with all of this is, okay, so I went all the way down to my 1%. Well, now I'll scroll and only select everyone to my 2% and go from there. And this is how I would look at the rest of the golfers. So then I would paste those here and it goes down to line 121, which is actually 120 lineups, meaning 20 of these golfers are going to have to be put into the next column next to it. And since we know we're going to be pairing some of these 10K golfers up, I don't mind that. So like, you know, I need to find the 100 mark. So this is 100 right here. And say select these golfers and put them up right here. So I need one more. But with that, let's see, I don't remember where they were. 101. So it was Harry Higgs to what? Rory Sabatini? Is that what it was? Yeah. I need to do this in order to make it work out. But then I would copy this over here and do the same thing. Chase Seifert. And then I need to grab 4. Pull them up to... I guess I needed more than 4. Right here. This is my way of kind of enjoying lineup building. Now, I would probably randomize this a few more times because I don't frankly care to see it look like this. Yeah, those extra 20 golfers, it ended up being perfect, adding them right here. So maybe I wouldn't grab any more than that. But I would also look at the golfers that I'm using. So, yeah, I mean, this is one way to do it. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that. But I would look at some of these percentages. And even though, like, say, James Hahn's at 6%, maybe I just use them at 2%. Maybe I don't select any of these golfers down here. But like I said, each golfer in this field is in one of the anchor buckets. So there's that. And I could avoid all these 1% golfers. How many do I have that I have at 1%? 46. And the reason for me doing this is because there are so many 6K golfers, and usually randoms show up inside the top 10 frequently from the 6K range. So therefore, why not make it random in your lineup process as well? But I think this is going to be it. I actually wanted this to be much shorter than that, than an hour long. But here we are at an hour. It's still shorter than the preview. Not as exaggerative as I made it sound in the beginning of the video, but here we are. So hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, comment anything. I don't care. I will answer anything and everything. Throw a comment in there if you have a question. But yeah, comment, subscribe. We are also at 199 subscribers. So if you've made it all the way here and you're not subscribed, be the 200th subscriber. I will cheer you on. If you tell me you're the 200th subscriber, I will give you a shout out in the next video. I will also put you in the comment section. Just let me know. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys. See you later.